Have you read Hillary's book, Maureen?
No.
Any interest?
Well, I was I was in Ireland interviewing the Prime Minister, so I'm catching up. Yeah, I will definitely read it. But oh God, it's so hard to talk about Hillary because I know people get mad at me, and Times readers get mad at me when I talk about it. But I think you know that the Comey thing and the Russian hacking, of course, hurt. But I think she could have won if she had paid attention to basic politics, which is you've got to go to Wisconsin, you've got to go to Michigan, you've got to have an economic message, a snappy one. You've got to, you know, she actually thought about the slogan, "It's her turn," which kind of shows that she hadn't absorbed the lesson of her husband. The moment where her husband beat George Bush Sr. was when the woman in the debate said, "What are you gonna do for me?" And Bush Sr. looked at his watch, and Bill Clinton went to the edge of the stage and said, "Tell me something about your life." Elections have to be about the voters' lives and what they need and want. They're not about you and the fact that it's your turn. And, you know, I just think my favorite kind of weird historical fact is I feel like two Democratic nominees won the election but didn't get to go to the Oval Office because they didn't listen to Bill Clinton's advice, you know, his wife and Al Gore.
Al Gore.
And Bill Clinton tried to tell his wife and her campaign manager a year out that there was an emergency situation with white rural men, and he offered to go work on it. And Robbie Mook, the campaign manager, would literally do an impression of Bill Clinton and make fun of him to reporters as old and out of it and not understanding the new campaign model, the big data model they were using. And so, you know, Gore and Hillary had the right advice from Bill, but they just didn't listen.
I think you're right about Robbie Mook and John Podesta. These were not the guys who were like Lee Atwater or Mary Matalin or any of the, you know, the real great strategists over the years. They dealt with polls. They didn't deal enough with data, and I think Hillary Clinton was basically. I know people anecdotally in Western Wisconsin, Democratic friends, and in Western Pennsylvania, who just kept saying, "Bring us the candidate. We don't need to see Tim Kaine anymore. We don't need to see Joe Biden. We want to see her." She basically phoned it in. I hate to say it. And Donald Trump, for all the things we can say negatively about him, was an active, engaged candidate traveling around the country, and yes, he also made it about himself and not about the voter, but he pretended, and voters began to see that. I think the main reason may be that we had 32 years of the establishment. We had a Bush followed by 8 years of a Clinton, followed by 8 years of a Bush, followed by 8 years of Obama and Clinton for part of that time. And people were just ready for a change, and they wanted to
Yeah, and also President Obama and Hillary didn't, you know, they looked at the whole phenomenon of Bernie Sanders, a 74-year-old socialist who was attracting 10,000 plus crowds and didn't get what it meant. They didn't change their game plan at all. You know, and it never occurred to President Obama that maybe given the moment or whatever, Joe Biden might have been a better candidate, or that Hillary should change her message or anything. They just were like, no, eat your spinach, you know, take what we give you.
Yeah, like Calvin Coolidge, eat your spinach. I sort of think the one moment that may have changed things, and I know this is cruel to say, but I call it the glass slipper moment, you know, the Cinderella moment, was the right had set up this false narrative. You know, the far right had this whole notion that Hillary was ill. There was a sickness, you know, and it was all false. And yet she decided, for whatever reason, to you know, a year ago this month, to sort of stand there on 9/11, even though she had pneumonia, didn't tell her staff, and tottered, So she was caught. Then she went into that SUV and left the glass slipper. Her shoe was left at the side of the curb as the SUV sped away.
Right.
And here was a pumpkin. You know, the campaign became a pumpkin after that. People said, oh, you know what? Maybe she isn't so great. Maybe there's some unhealth
So
issue.
doubt.
Well, David Axelrod had a tweet about it. He said, it's not the health, it's the stealth. It's the feeling
The
that
stealth,
she's
that's right.
hiding. He said, of course people get sick during campaigns, you know, but don't hide it.
That morning was so strange. It was a Sunday morning. I was about to anchor at 11 a.m. She collapsed, didn't collapse. She slipped at 9:30 a.m. And for 90 minutes, they wouldn't say where she was. And we actually sent reporters to hospitals in New York because we were concerned that she was at the hospital. So over on the east side and over on the west side. And finally, after 90 minutes, which feels like an eternity in live TV, they reveal that she's at Chelsea's house and she's okay. But that stealth, that secrecy was exactly the problem that morning.
Well, also, I think another basic flaw of the campaign was all the ads and the message were geared toward telling people that Trump was a sexist jerk. But I think his voters knew that and liked it. So they were looking for a baseball bat to destroy the Capitol. And the more a Rottweiler to eat everyone's face off. So the more she said, this guy is horrible, the more they're like, yeah, he's really gonna get us where we need to go.